Dust off your starter jackets, rip off those tearaways, and blow into your game cartridges. I'm Sam Blanford.
I'm Sean Kelly.
I'm Pat Sellers.
Welcome to Wish It Was the 90s. This series is going to follow one of the most beloved animated cartoons of the 90s, the X-Men animated series. And what the format's going to be fairly simple. Each episode will cover off several episodes, a very brief synopsis of what happens, and then our thoughts. We'd love our listeners to watch along with us, and we'll do our best not to spoil anything. But before I get into anything else, I want to ask Sam Blanford, who is watching the series for the first time, what do you think of the intro song?
Yeah, so I didn't really take notice of it initially. I was just kind of like looking at the characters to see who I could figure out I knew. Because for context, I have no idea really about X-Men. I know Wolverine. I know some of the characters. I never was a big fan of comics as a kid, and I've probably seen one of these episodes at some point in my life. But yeah, I've got very little background in X-Men. But after the third episode, I was reveling in the background.
Oh, how good.
In the music. I was absolutely reveling.
I mean, they do love to pump it out. Like, I don't want to jump ahead, but the back end of episode 2, when they're kicking ass, all you can hear is and it's awesome.
That was the thing on rewatch though. Like on episode 1, they don't play it during action scenes. It's episode 2. It's any bit of action. They play that riff.
Every time, and slightly different versions of the riff too. Pat, I'll ask. So we've cleared off that Sam has no idea what he's getting himself in for.
Noob.
Especially that famed season 5 that they recorded in the Philippines. Pat, you're actually a fan from the 90s, is that right?
Oh, big time. Well, early Saturday morning, I still am a sleeper in it on a weekend if I can. So it's always real gutted if I missed it because I overslept on a Saturday morning. But yeah, it used to be every Saturday morning in New Zealand on a show called What Now? It was one of the cartoons you would get up for. It was this and Batman and probably something like Gargoyles.
Gargoyles is good viewing.
So rewatching it's been pretty interesting.
I can confirm that I remember the day the first episode aired. I, like you, Pat, woke up to watch my Saturday morning cartoons, and after Night of the Sentinels Part 1, I got on my BMX. I biked round to my cousin's house, Rory and Todd, and I was like, holy shit, did you see that? And honestly, Rory turned around with 6 knives sticking out of his knuckles, and he's like, how you doing, bub? And I was just like, oh my God, you get this. And I sort of, I'll come back to that because that's important details about characters. But
sorry, how old were you?
Well, so the series released in 92, but I don't think it came to New Zealand in 92 because I feel like I was a little bit older than 5. I reckon we probably got a delayed release.
Yeah, I don't think I was that young.
Nah, either that or I mean, it might have been a rerun, but I feel like I watched it in its entirety as it was happening. You know, like I didn't miss it.
I definitely slept in for a few episodes, which was disappointing, but yeah, I would have watched it most weekends.
So a little bit of context, I think, for our listeners. So the X-Men, obviously, you know, the Fox movies, Hugh Jackman, etc., and so forth. They're historically they came out in '63, written by Stan Lee and drawn by Jack Kirby, and they look, it's lazy writing. Stan Lee kind of I won't quote him because I'll get him wrong, but the way I read what he was thinking was every superhero is part of a science experiment gone wrong, or something happens to them. What if
Mm.
what if some people are just born with powers?
Yeah.
You know, like fine.
Sick of
And then
making origin stories.
yeah, who needs origin stories if there's just a race of superheroes?
Mm.
And I don't know if you picked up on this, Sam. You must have. But they've over time they became this great metaphor for minorities.
Yeah, so we'll probably get to it later. Probably talk about it in I believe, the third episode, into Magneto, with Beast being put up for, in court.
Mm, mm. His incarceration, which yeah. So it's interesting, right? Because it happened quite quickly. You know, the Sentinels appear in X-Men comic books. I think within the first 10 episodes.
Sorry, the Sentinels, those robots.
Those really idiotic
Big
robots.
purple and pink robots.
That Bolivar Trask, the guy who builds them, who's in episode 2, he's in it's like issue 7 into the Sentinels or something like that. For context for everyone, I think I've read the first 40 issues of X-Men, and it is a slog. And I think it's really interesting that they're this metaphor for minority groups, and they are 5 Caucasian, good-looking Americans with a American boss who's I guess he's the only real minority in the group because he's a paraplegic, right? But even that's handled poorly in the 60s because Professor X is internally thinking about how he loves someone or something, and he says, "But she'll never love me because of this damn wheelchair." So what? But then they get revamped in the 70s, initially by this guy Len Wein. I hope I got that right. Who's the creator of Wolverine, and then this guy Chris Claremont, who has one of the longest runs in comic book history and is arguably one of the greats. He does so many incredibly progressive things, like Cyclops is the leader. He leaves the team. Whom does he make the team? The Black Woman. Storm's the leader of the X-Men. You know, he introduces a Soviet, a German, a Native American. You know, and that really adds credence to this representation of different groups of people.
Which kind of makes sense, right? Like if it is a mutation of humans, it would be happening all over the world. So it does make sense for everyone to just be in one country.
100%. That comes back to that old weird thing about Marvel superheroes all living in New York. So all of them. But yeah, so that's a bit of backstory. And so this thing comes up in '89. They did a pilot for a TV series called Pride of the X-Men, focusing on Kitty Pryde, who in what we've seen is replaced by Jubilee. Kitty Pryde's another good character because she's a young Jewish girl. And the episode exists, and maybe we'll cover it at some stage. It's one episode. It's pretty hard to watch. Wolverine inexplicably has a thick Australian accent. And yeah, it's okay.
Maybe it's foreshadowing for Hugh Jackman.
Yeah. Well, I guess because he certainly has a real thick Australian accent in the first X-Men movie.
Another one I haven't seen.
Yeah. Oh,
You haven't even done the movies.
Nah.
it's interesting. It's interesting because X-Men 1 and Night of the Sentinels have some similarities. Except in the movie, Wolverine's the point of view character. For us, the point of view character is Jubilee. Anyway, that's some backstory, right? We don't need to go too deep into it. People really want to. There's a million articles written online.
But it's quite interesting though. Like Jubilee is such a massive character in this, and it's probably the only thing she's a big character in.
It's a real moment of time thing, right? Because she's 90s mall rat.
Yeah.
And this is a 90s show. And yeah, she barely makes it into the 2000s. Like she features currently in comic books, but And she doesn't even last that long in the X-Men in the 90s. She's once in, I think it's 94 or 95 when they make a spin-off book called Generation X. She joins that team.
Which she can't hang around that long because her powers is like sparklers out of her hands. Like,
Yeah, what is
most
her
kids
power?
are doing that every Guy Fawkes.
Also, you could bring in the questionability of having a like young teen on your paramilitary task force, or the fact that Professor X runs a school that trains people to be soldiers. It's all bizarre, but I guess that's besides the point. Well, I'll come back to Professor X when we go through. So before we go into the details of the 3 episodes and we can chat about them, I'm just curious from both of you. I'll start with you, Sam, because you're doing this for the first time. After 3 episodes, who's your favorite character?
Well, I'll probably talk about this a little bit. I definitely don't like Wolverine, and I definitely don't like Cyclops. I think Beast is my favorite character. Um, Gambit as well, but haven't seen too much of Gambit yet. But yeah, I'll probably have to go with Beast. I do like a well-spoken blue character.
Yeah, wow. What I really like about Gambit is that everyone else is in their civvies in the mall, and he's rolling around in his X-Men costume with that weird '90s head sock thing that was a thing in comic books for a while.
Hitting on that woman that's selling him a deck of cards. Is that what
yeah.
She's extremely forward.
She's in. She's definitely in. Is there a side story for that somewhere? Does his mutant powered son or daughter show up at some point through that storyline?
In some of the comic book storylines, one of his mutant powers is like a very subtle, almost hypnosis that like he can charm people unnaturally. But I think that's just people changing the story for their own needs, because it's because if you look at it from the outside, he's just a sleazy Cajun.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. It's Pat Sellers.
Yo.
Who's your favorite character? Well, you're like me. Your situation's different because you can't pick it based on 3 episodes. So looking back at this and thinking about it, who was your favorite character?
With the rewatch, though, I remember my favorite character was Gambit as a kid. He's definitely not now. He's just so over the top sleazy, and most of his sayings don't make sense. Neither does Jubilee's. I reckon Beast is probably my favorite on rewatch, even though he's not in it a hell of a lot.
Nah, that's a good point.
I really enjoy him, and I don't think I did as a kid. Well, I mean, not that I didn't like it, but he wouldn't have been my top pick.
Yeah, I mean, a mild spoiler, but Beast is only in season 1 spasmodically because he's incarcerated. But because of his popularity, they make him a series regular in season 2.
Ah, there you go.
Right.
Much like Omar on The Wire.
Yes.
He was only supposed to be in season 1, and then
it's quite common, right?
his popularity. Yeah, I think so. His popularity just kept him on till season 5.
Marvel are doing that now with like their movies and TV shows. They just put a whole bunch of characters in, and if people are real popular, like, you can have a Disney Plus series.
Yeah. Pretend it was like 18 years in the making. We were always doing that. No, you weren't.
So my favorite when I was a kid initially was Wolverine. But when I went round to the McSweeney's and we'd all seen that first episode and we're like, let's play X-Men, Rory was the oldest, already had the knives. So he was Wolverine. And so he gave me some cards and he's like, Gambit's the second coolest, so you should be Gambit, because that was Rory's sort of his style was to make sure that Toddy was below me in the pecking order, even though he's older. That's what brothers do to each other. And he made Todd be Cyclops. Even though as a kid, I was like, oh, Cyclops sucks. But now, and I'm heavily influenced by how many comics I've read, Cyclops is my favorite character. So anyway,
I reckon Gambit was super popular like when you were kids. I reckon one of the reasons was when you were a kid running around pretending to be the X-Men, it was quite easy to pretend to be them because everyone's got a deck of cards at their house and run around throwing that around the house. And
very hard to throw a card well, though.
yeah, but like in your head you could do it, and then you try it, and then it just lands at your foot.
Right. So yeah, literally, or like you throw it and it comes back to you floating.
None of them ever lit on fire or anything either. Disappointing.
Yeah. So I think, based on sort of nerd culture, X-Men animated series is probably second most popular superhero cartoon of the time. That Batman animated series that's very good as well. Maybe we'll get to that one day. But I mean, this was very, very popular, and the X-Men were the most popular Marvel property in the 80s and the 90s. You know, X-Men #1, which was like a relaunch. X-Men 1 came out in 1991, and is to this day the more copies of this comic have been sold than any other comic. And it's drawn by this Jim Lee, who later went on to draw some phenomenal Batman, and I think he was the boss at DC for a while. And all of these costumes are based on his designs. So this is what people think of when they think of X-Men in the 90s. They think of Jim Lee and this show.
I reckon, yeah, any kid from the 90s, if they thought of like the X-Men, they think of like the costumes in the show, which are sensational.
And it's amazing how someone like Gambit can't shake that costume, even though it's ridiculous. Like, he still rocks it now. And it's like...
Well, one of the things that I can't understand is like Marvel, well, now Disney will, they'll try and find $1 out of everything. I don't know why they're not selling these brown bomber jackets that all the X-Men are wearing with the X symbol on it, because sign me up.
Yeah.
I don't remember them all wearing it either. Like, it's on rewatch.
Cyclops has got a great one. Like,
yeah,
Cyclops
he does.
He's got a great one. And you look at him and you're like, God, you look cool. Except for those yellow undies. They're awful. But even Wolverine's wearing undies.
Yeah,
right.
Weird. Well, Beast is only wearing undies most of the time, which is quite funny.
I'd love to do a deep dive on Beast's body, because his waist is tiny and his chest is ginormous. And yeah, he's ridiculous. But right, let's go, eh? Let's
get into it.
I think this is why this show is more popular than most. First of all, it's long story format, and you get that straight away because the first episode ends on a cliffhanger, right? To be continued, and it's part 1 of 2 parts. You know, they're setting seeds for other things the whole way through. It's like comic book storytelling.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that made it really popular. Like, as a kid, they didn't dumb it down and, just make it separate little worlds in every episode. Like, it was a continuous story. Like, you watch any series now, they didn't dumb it down for you, which was quite cool.
Yeah, and lots of it might have gone over your head, but it doesn't really matter, right? It's there and it's good. Right, so here's what happens. Episode 1. You guys feel free just to, if I miss something or you really need to focus on a moment, we can talk about it. So it starts with action, right? And it's, spoiler, the big, huge 24-abbed man is Sabretooth, and he's wrecking cars and stuff like that. And it's actually a news report, and it cuts to Jubilee's foster parents who are watching it, and they talk about how the mutant control agency is going to come to take her, to help her because she's a mutant. It's the right thing to do, yada, yada, yada. And
right, Sean, just to jump in.
Yes.
A couple of things I have to mention. There were 4 names I had absolutely no idea about in the intro.
Yep.
I had Rogue ? Gambit ? Jubilee ? Which is quite interesting because it's obviously from Jubilee's perspective, like you were speaking from before. And Jean Grey ? I had no idea.
Yep.
And something I found funny, I obviously noticed, I didn't know it was Sabretooth at the time, but then when Sabretooth comes in later, then I'd put in my notes Sabretooth, the news report, current anti-mutant hysteria is growing worldwide. That was a great way to start the, start the
Yeah,
episode.
really set the tone.
I think it's really good because it's like it's a bit of action to start off with, and it's like
Yeah.
something's going on. They don't muck around. It's straight into a story, right? Everything's already whatever's going on is already established. And so Jubilee hears them, right? And so we don't know this, but she runs off, and then out of nowhere comes a giant robot. Look, I gotta say, one of my notes says here, Sentinels, terrible at their job.
Yeah.
And it's after her because she's been identified by her parents to this whatever, and it just wrecks the side of their house. And and she's not there, so it takes off, and the parents are like, what the hell have we done? And then
They didn't seem that remorseful. They were just like, oh, I mean, the house, but I mean, I suppose we've still done the right thing here. She's a mutant. She needs to go to jail. Our daughter that we adopted.
it's to mutant jail.
What?
So, do they call her Jubilee? Because doing a bit of research, her name's Jubilation Lee.
Yes, yeah. So I guess Jubilee, the power name is because of like Jubilee fireworks, but it's a terrible name. Let's be honest.
Terrible.
Her mutant name is Jubilee, and her full name is Jubilation Lee. Although, like, mad respect for making your point of view character a American-born Chinese girl.
But naming it up. Did you say the creator was her last name Lee?
Her last name's Lee.
But no, the creator of the series X-Men, is that the last name Lee?
Stan Lee.
Yeah. Yeah. Thought that was quite interesting.
I think that's a coincidence because he had nothing to do with the creation of Jubilee.
Oh,
he was pretty much out of X-Men. She's a 90s character. She's maybe 90, 91. She pops up as a character for the first time. She's still new.
What are her powers? Is it just fireworks out of my hands? Is that it? It's like,
yeah, I think you could find,
because she does it in fights, and is it just like these other really powerful, like where she's fighting other mutants or even like a Sentinel, she flicks her sparks in front of him. It's just like, I distracted you.
She can do lots of stuff though. Like it seems like her powers are good.
So in the comics, her powers, get like all characters, she has her moments where it turns out she's super powerful. But you're right, Salas. The gist of it is she got sparkly hands.
Yeah. And is that why she wears shades, so that she doesn't, get distracted herself by her sparkles? She lets everyone else get.
Wear protective eyewear when dealing with fireworks, right? If you're holding them in your hands. Anyway, so she's off at the mall and breaking arcade machines because she can't control her powers, and
the stupid jerk arcade manager's really working towards that mass hysteria that the news reporter talked about.
Yeah, we don't want your kind in here.
That's what she calls him. You stupid jerk arcade manager.
Yeah, she gives him a serve.
Yeah, full job title. That'll show on.
And so she takes off and bumps into our first look at Storm and Rogue, who are just hanging out at the mall. And we get up.
I really like Storm too. I forgot about Storm.
You know what I really like about Storm?
Her big command.
She really tells you what she's doing. I summon the full force of the storm.
It's quite funny because she does that all the way through the series, but I noticed on rewatch in that first episode, the first time she does it, which is basically the next scene when Jubilee runs into both Rogue and Storm in their civilian outfits. Rogue mugs her off for doing like a big fancy saying before using her powers.
Yeah, she does. She's like, yeah, that's good from her, eh?
Yeah.
I think Rogue's really quite likable.
I like both of them, yeah.
I think it's also quite cool to note. Sorry. What happens is the Sentinel busts through the mall, and like, if you were scared of mutants, you should probably park there and now be terrified of giant robots. um, but thereafter, it's after Jubilee, and so everyone's running wild, and Gambit's in that card shop flirting with that bird, and he fully costumed up, and he's got to take off, see what's going on, and Storm, Rogue, and Gambit sort of fight the Sentinel off, giving Jubilee time to escape. I think it's awesome that Storm and Rogue are clearly super powerful female characters because they can fly. Rogue's got, like absolutely whacking this thing, and Storm summoning weather powers. That's mint. But they do enough to get her out there, and then she runs into Cyclops, and she gets gassed, right, or something like that, and has a little fall asleep or whatever, and the Sentinel does an energy blast, and then Cyclops, energy blast, huh? How about one from a pro? And seriously, how have they ever had problems with Sentinels if he can just blast their heads off? So he literally takes one shot at it and it's cooked. He blasts its head right off.
Yeah, the in general throughout this show, like the levels of their powers seem to be all over the show, which is fine.
Which is also in line with comic books.
Yeah.
And so they take Jubilee back, and this is you haven't seen this, Sam, but this Jubilee waking up on a doctor's bed in the sub-levels of the mansion and like what's going on. This is the first X-Men movie, but it's Wolverine. It's actually incredible how similar it is. And she gets talked around by Storm, and she's keen to stay. And they're sort of going, what's going on here? What are we dealing with? These Sentinels. And Jubilee runs into the danger room, sees Wolverine and Gambit doing a training session, and it seems like they're trying to kill each other. And then she blasts them. She meets Morph, who's watching TV and just morphing into people. And I know you guys have questions about Morph. We can talk about him in a minute. And everything sort of settles down, and she gets a good explanation dump from Professor X. And then they do some stuff with the head to find some stuff out about the mutant control agent. So they find out where it is.
Well, you missed out a good one of Jubilee mugging them off for saying, "Aren't you guys a little too old to be at school?" They explain that they're part of a school, and then ask if they get help. They got held back.
Yeah, that's and it's true.
They do. How old is everyone? Do you think in the series?
Well,
I get Jubilee's a teenager, but are they all meant to be?
I mean,
Cyclops
seems like 20s? He's like minimum 30s.
Yeah.
He's still holding on to that bloody Letterman jacket.
He looks good in it.
I hate it.
He's got and he's not married to, but he's dating Jean Grey, so she's older. In later episodes, there's flashbacks, so they've been there for a while. Wolverine's at least like 80 or 90, because there's a flashback episode later of him in World War II.
Yeah.
What? So wolves can just what? He just lives longer. Look like.
Well, he's got an incredible. His main mutant powers is healing factor. So if you heal really well, you don't really age, right?
I have no idea that he's got healing powers. When's that coming in?
They don't do it as much as you'd expect, but
I suppose maybe they have it in the first few episodes.
No, they because in like episode 4 or 5, he's like all bandaged up and got sore ribs and healing slowly.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
But he has a healing factor.
So when I was thinking about Wolverine, it took me to that. I don't know if you've seen the Family Guy episode where the Griffins get superpowers because they like roll in radioactive waste.
Classic.
And I don't know if it's a piss take of Wolverine, but Meg can just grow her fingernails long, and that's her superpower.
One of Wolverine's villains in the comic books is Lady Deathstrike, who pretty much does that.
Well, that was just my I didn't know. I don't really know what Wolverine's superpower is apart from the fact that he can grow these. It doesn't even. He wouldn't even need to grow them. Like Batman could do that with the help of, his financial backers. Is just get some nails coming out of his.
What's
his
that
hand.
guy's name from Street Fighter? Is it Vega? He's
Nah,
got
it's
those
like,
big claw
who's the
claw
one who can
things.
stretch his arms real far? That's not Vega, eh?
No. But there's one who's just got like a 4 Wolverine claw thing, but it's just like it's like a glove almost.
My point is, I was very underwhelmed by Wolverine.
And he's a jerk.
Yeah,
You get some
definitely
good
not.
backstory later on, though.
Yeah,
You get some good
I feel
storylines
like I'm
later.
going to come around. Like the Wolverine Cyclops tension is palpable.
How good is that? It's off the bat, right?
Kind of makes no sense as well. Like Wolverine just hates everyone except for maybe Morph.
He whips Morph.
Yeah,
He's the only guy that can make him laugh.
yeah. Ugh.
So they get some information from the Sentinel head, and they find out where this place is. And Jubilee leaves. She wants to go home, thinking the Sentinels are going to go for her parents, and she gets captured by 2 Sentinels, and we meet the villain, Henry Gyrich, who is he's from the comics. He hates mutants.
Not a fan.
He hates them. He's actually
Muties.
quite a big
I
player at the
think
moment.
muties is a really good slur, by the way, for mutants.
I also think, like, if I was a mutant, I wouldn't want to be called a mutant. Like, it's just not a nice word.
You've got to claim that word back, make it your own.
I guess so. Own it. So Jubilee leaves, and the X-Men, Professor X is like, we're going to go to this mutant control agency. We're going to destroy all their information because they've got information on all these mutants. It's no good. Wolverine's like, I go where I want to go. And he's going to look for Jubilee. And everyone's like, we're off on a mission, mate. And he's just pretty much like, fuck you, I do what I want. So he takes off and has that altercation with Cyclops. But my favourite part is, so Professor X is like, you're going to take a strike team. You're going to go to this mutant agency place and you're going to break in and you're going to destroy all their records. And Cyclops is like, the X-Men have never been out in the public. Do you think breaking the law like this is going to be is a good idea? And Professor X is just like, we've got to do what we got to do, man. And it's, do we?
Professor X is known for questionable leadership.
Oh my god, Cyclops, I guess so.
Yeah, how much did you know about like the mutant control agency? Like they it just sort of appears. They call themselves an agency, but they don't appear to be involved with the government or any government because later they move to another country.
Yeah, so
are they like a private industry? Then they just get
I think they're a private company that the government uses. I think that gets stated maybe in either this episode or the next episode.
So what's the real life equivalent of the mutant control agency? Something about immigration?
Yeah, some sort of cross of a few, maybe like an intelligence / immigration type agency. If you mix all those up into a ball with
SIFs,
there probably is a real life equivalent that we don't know about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, probably.
So they get to the base, and Wolverine turns up, and he's like, the trail went cold and blah blah blah, but it led me here or whatever. And so Wolverine, Morph Beast, Storm get inside the perimeter, and how do we end here? Do the Sentinels turn up, or do some soldiers turn up? I can't remember exactly.
There are soldiers. I think there are soldiers like coming down in tanks, and like Cyclops realizes that they're in trouble.
Yeah.
And they're about to open a door, and there's a whole bunch of soldiers on the other side. And that's the end of the episode.
Yeah, that's how good. Couple of important things on the TV screens when they're in the war room, I think it's called, in the X Mansion. You get a shot of Sabretooth on a screen. You get a shot of Magneto, who obviously we meet in episode 3. You also get a shot of a character called Domino, who's a real 90s X-Force character, and you get a shot of Sal's favorite actual X-Men character, Cannonball. Did you notice that, Pat?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, and we get to meet him later on.
Yeah, we do. Very later on.
Yeah, but they made him ginger in the animated
I mean, obviously,
series,
I've got a lot of respect for that.
Exactly. That's just a strange choice. I assume it was just like there is a lot of like just errors in the animation throughout this. Like Wolverine's hair often becomes blue at different times. I don't know what that's about.
The animation's wonky at best.
Yeah, and I like that.
I think that's a big separator between this and Batman. Like the Batman animation is high quality. This is pretty jonky, but I don't notice it because I'm so caught up in what's going on. Right, so we get to Night of the Sentinels Part 2.
I've just butt in there. For such a short like they're 20-minute episodes, the intro is almost 3 minutes on its own.
Yeah.
Like there's obviously like where they're introducing all the characters and the music, the amazing music's happening. But before that, they do like a flashback what happened last episode, and that's really long too.
Previously on X-Men.
On X-Men.
Yeah. The other thing was I noticed in that first episode, it's only 20 minutes. They just get straight to the action, and you get introduced to Jubilee, Storm, Gambit, Rogue, Cyclops, Beast, Morph, Professor X, Wolverine, and Jean Grey all in one episode. And I've probably missed some. And it still doesn't actually confuse you. It's fine.
The previously on X-Men recap for the episode 2 pretty much just recaps the characters and gives you their names. Like, it's quite subtly done, but it's like, that's what that recap is. A fun fact about that phenomenal 3-minute intro. Me and my wife were at Justin Timberlake in Sydney, and the opening act was finishing their set. And you know how bands like to introduce or acknowledge all members of the band? Whilst the lead singer was going, and on the bass, Kevin Sidney. The song the band played was, I was like standing there going like, I know, Shah, do you know the song? She's like, no. I was like, I know the song. I was like, how good from this random Aussie band.
That's awesome.
Right, episode 2.
Can I ask you a question about Morph for a second?
Oh, you want to know about Morph?
Yeah. Since we got introduced to him.
It wasn't a good sign for Morph when he wasn't in the opening credits.
Yeah, also he opens up with like a really annoying laugh.
His laugh's awful, right?
Is Morph X-Men character, or is he just in the series?
No, he's an X-Men character. He's also wearing the generic training costume. He doesn't have an actual uniform.
Yeah, I like it.
All bad signs for Morph.
Yeah. He's extremely replaceable based on what we were given in the first episode.
Would you like me to do my Morph dump now?
Yeah.
So.
Sounds disgusting, but go for it.
So they were going to use a character called Thunderbird because, as I said before, when Chris Claremont took over, he was phenomenal. And in his 3rd or 4th issue, a character he had introduced called Thunderbird, a Native American, John Proudstar, died and on a mission. And it was really big because superheroes don't die at this time. And it had a real profound impact on the team because they'd never lost someone since, they started in 63. They'd never lost a team member. I think Professor X had like 3 or 4 fake deaths, but and it has this really interesting, like, it's really important for Cyclops because he's the field leader, and he takes it personally. He thinks he fucked up, and John Proudstar is one of those few comic book characters that has stayed dead. His brother Jimmy becomes a member of X-Force and this and that and the other, but they decided we can't kill a Native American in the second episode. Spoilers for what may or may not happen to Morph. And that's fair as well. Like, you don't want to do that. What sucks is that they didn't make him a character, just put him in the team. So in the 60s, in the original pretty hard to read 60s, there's a villain who became an ally called Changeling, Kevin Sidney, ridiculous costume, who could change his appearance a la Mystique, or like we see Morph do on the episodes. And what's really interesting about him is you don't really see him again. Like, he might pop up, maybe he probably pops up because that's what happens, but I can't remember seeing him again, except in '95 they did this event-wide crossover called Age of Apocalypse, and in that the X-Men are run by Magneto, Professor X, blah blah blah, and Kevin Sidney morphs in that. He looks nothing like the morph that you guys have seen, but clearly they've put him in because of his popularity in the show. People like this character.
He's so replaceable, though.
He's got a great. I like Morph as his power better than Wolverine's power.
What about Wolverine's power to smell really well, though? That's pretty good.
I've got here, I smell gun oil, said no one ever.
His smell power is out of control.
All I got from your copy, that whole thing, was you used Kevin Sidney for the guitarist in your story.
Yeah, I thought that I'd done that in my own head for a second. I was like, nah, he can't have. He can't have used Kevin Sidney twice in two different stories.
I did that deliberately. That was a little tease.
Yeah, nice.
Oh, was that going to be in the quiz at the end?
Right. So
Wolverine smells gun oil.
Yeah. So they're committing multiple felonies, breaking, entering, destroying.
This is like they're outside the agency now, right? That's where we're at.
Well, no. So some are inside. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. And so
this is one that kept me up at night. I wrote it down because I was like, that doesn't make sense. And then in the middle of the night, I realized what it meant. When Rogue goes to Cyclops, you look nervous as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. And I was like, what does that mean? Like a cat's scared of chairs.
Their tails.
And then in the middle of the night, tails. I was like, because they're going to get their tail. But I reckon I was just, it confused me for hours. I was sitting in bed, just like, no, I must be getting it wrong. And I almost drifted off, and I was like, tails.
That would suck.
Couldn't figure it out. Well, I thought cats hated chairs for a second, but I was like, maybe they just hate chairs.
Right. So back to the story. A big fight ensues on the front lawn with heaps of Sentinels. My question remains: if Cyclops can blast their head off one, I can't see how they lose this battle.
Yeah, that pissed me off too.
But they are really getting hammered. Morph inexplicably pushes. You see it in a flashback later in the episode, but it inexplicably pushes Wolverine out of the way of an energy blast from a Sentinel. It's like, Morph, your power is to change what you look like. Wolverine's is to be tough. Let the tough guy take the hit.
Is it to be tough? I thought it was just grow nails long.
And be hairy?
Smell really well. But it's healing factor. He should have been, yeah.
So they have to retreat, and Cyclops makes the call as the leader, and Wolverine's not having a bar of it, and Rogue uses her powers to incapacitate Wolverine, and they get out of there and leave Morph and Beast behind, and we later find out that Morph died because Jean Grey was using Cerebro, the mutant searching supercomputer thing.
Mutant Google
Yeah, mutant Google.
or Facebook. Maybe both of those things matched into one.
Sorry,
Yeah.
before you carry on, I've got, because you mentioned his name in the first episode, but I don't know. I don't think his name is mentioned. The redhead bloke. What's his name?
Irish.
Yeah, I didn't know
Henry.
who he. I don't. Had his name been mentioned at this point?
Maybe not.
So I don't
Maybe.
think it had. So I put, is he Magneto? Question mark. Absolutely no idea. That was my, like, I was like, oh, maybe he gets powers and becomes Magneto.
You were expecting this show to be really complicated. You were looking for like where the plot was going. This is good.
He I don't know if you guys watched Heroes.
Yes.
Yeah, I did watch not all of it, but yeah,
He
I
reminds me of, I think it's Hayden Panettiere's dad, or
Oh yeah.
he reminds me of that guy. He's got the same glasses. I don't think he's got red hair, but he's real mysterious, and he's behind everything. That's who he reminded me of.
That's a fair comparison, in my opinion. And then we get a shot of the President of the United States, who is a woman.
Yeah.
And that's what,
you know,
and that's how we know this is not our universe.
Yeah. Yeah. So in some ways it's progressive, even though the show's all about sort of prejudice and stuff. But,
Yeah, it's mint.
Lady President. Now, there's a win.
And she talks down the X-Men's raid on the Federal Security Agency headquarters, and acknowledges the existence of Sentinels, and that's not good. And you know, unsurprisingly, Cyclops was right. Their attack on a government section facility wasn't good for their PR. And then we get this great scene of Wolverine shooting pool at a bar. No beers anywhere, but it's definitely a bar.
Scene.
And getting himself into a bit of a tussle, and then Cyclops comes in and they take his glasses off and call him a nerd because, you know, if you wear glasses, you're a nerd. Even though
the guys, like the bullies in the bar, for some reason, like a lot of the voice acting's really good in this actually, but like the choice for those ones, like they've got like the nerdiest voices. I don't know why they picked that voice. It's like, you
like
beauties.
That same voice actor plays one of the guards for Beasts in episode 3.
Oh, that's the guy that mugs him off.
Magneto pulls his pants down.
Look at this, a mutant trying to read.
Yeah. He's reading bloody. Oh, we'll come back to that because that's good stuff.
Yeah. That causes a lot of questions, that comment as well. Because anyway, we'll get to that. We're only halfway through too.
Yeah.
At this point, because Wolverine. That's why I want to talk about it. Wolverine is in his he's in mufti then, eh?
Yeah. Civvies
at the bar.
I really like it when they're in mufti.
Same.
He looked like, I was like, Hugh Jackman was a great choice, because when I saw that, I was like, oh shit, that's just Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, how good, eh? Surely you get the same vibes from Patrick Stewart. I mean, Professor X.
Yeah, I do. And that was just like my view of what Professor X looked like as Patrick Stewart, because I've seen, promos and shit.
Yes, yeah. So we can get through. So Wolverine's like, if you're here to apologize, I don't want to hear it. And it's like, nah, I don't apologize for decisions made during battle or whatever. And it's like, fuck, you're right, you nerd. But he's like, how would you like to go to where they make these things? And Wolverine just like that, switches like, tell me where. Because he obviously wants revenge for his great mate Morph. And Cyclops goes to talk to Jubilee's foster parents, and Jubilee's foster father rings Gyrich, and then he realizes afterwards that Cyclops is an alright dude, and he's like, mate, you've got to get out of here. I just called the thing. And then sure enough, the Sentinels turn up. However, it was a very well thought out plan by the X-Men, because they were hoping a Sentinel would come so they could follow it. And so they do. They find out where this base is, and they go to save Jubilee and take out the Sentinels. They get in there, and really just here comes the theme song, and here comes they really are on the top of the. Sorry, just to pause. We also meet Bolivar Trask, who is canonically the inventor of the Sentinels.
So he's the guy who's the hero's man, his like second hand, like right hand man, and he makes the. Does he like? He's the engineer, I guess.
Yeah. He's the builder.
This is where I was like, shit, they can just take down these Sentinels. Why didn't they do that earlier?
Oh yeah, they just tear them to pieces, eh? And the one-liners are flying, the theme song's flying.
At one point, Cyclops gives like a Borat style "nat" to one of the Sentinels before zapping him.
Of course, not.
I've got another note for this episode. Sentinels still bad at their job.
No improvements there.
Anyway, and they win, and then there's this great, like, Storm does an awesome thing, and she passes out, and Wolverine catches her, and Wolverine says to Cyclops, "Must be our company, Cyclops. She's asleep." and then even better, he's like, "Mission accomplished, buddy." And then Cyclops puts his hand on Wolverine's shoulder, and he's like, "Let's go home." And that's the end of the episode. Oh, no, sorry, it's not, because Jubilee bids farewell to her, the best foster parent she's ever had.
Yeah.
Even though they dobbed her in.
Yeah, must have been a low bar.
Yeah.
And she seemed pretty fine about leaving, to be honest. She was just, moving on. I love him.
They said, "You'll still come and see us, won't you?" And she's like, "Obviously." Spoiler alert, never see the foster parents again.
I don't blame her.
I looked up some reviews at this point of the pilots. I think it was when the DVD was released, and the IGN reviews were mixed, to say the least. One said, just in quotes, "pretty decent," and the other was it's as compelling as it is in comic form. So, as someone who's trying to form an opinion, it was quite interesting to hear two sides of the spectrum there.
Yeah, wow. Look,
pretty covered in sugar.
I think what's really interesting about these episodes is there's quite a lot of action, and they've done a really clever thing, because Marvel has a pretty obvious mandate on cartoons. You can't have grievous violence on humans, right? In this whole series, Wolverine don't stab no one. Yeah, because he can't, because it's a kid's show. So Sentinels are the perfect villains because they're robots. Cyclops can blast a robot's head off. I promise you will not see him blast a man's head off. Unless you read Ultimatum from a terrible crossover from the 2000s where he blasts Magneto's head off. That's in the Ultimate Universe. That's tough. That's hard. It's terrible. Don't want to talk about it. Right, should we get into, because we've been going a long time here, and we've still got into Magneto to go. Any comments on Night of the Sentinels?
Nah, let's get into
I think we're there.
Magneto.
I think we've got everything in. But I was pretty surprised with how easily Jubilee moved on with her life away from her pretty ordinary foster parents, which, I mean, maybe that's the answer in it.
Yeah. And like literally, like, yeah, you can take her off our hands. We won't get any of the proper authorities involved to sign any paperwork. You just take her to your paramilitary training facility, and you go for it.
And we won't send robots to kill her.
We'll come back to that with something that happens in this episode.
Right. So, I think I said this to you, Pat, in the first lockdown last year when we were watching a few Marvel shows. I think Enter Magneto is an amazing episode. And it's really cool because it's pretty much X-Men issue 1, 1963.
That's cool.
Yeah, they do a really good job of rehashing it into this. But so it starts with Beast in prison. He's reading Animal Farm.
That's great.
Oh, it's so good, isn't it? That's so mint.
You can't go past the, well, get a load of that. A mutant trying to read.
Yeah, by a guy who sounds like he can't read and
Yeah.
clearly has never read Orwell.
This is a massive facility, supposedly like containing a number of mutants. Like, is he really mugging off, or is he like actually like surprised? Like, surely he's seen plenty of mutants reading in there.
Yeah. What does he think mutants are?
I don't know.
Beast is definitely a different beast from most of the other.
Yeah. He's got a very visual mutation, doesn't
he?
Yeah, which I think is part of the nerdy voiced guards proclamation.
It's interesting. I don't know if I can't remember if this is covered. I think it is insinuated, but in the comic books, he's originally just like a bulky dude with kind of like he's got like big hands and big feet, and he's very aerobic.
Yeah.
And
so
he actually he experiments on himself in the 60s. He experiments on himself to try and find a cure for the exchange,
which they did that in the movie. So that's quite is that quite accurate? What happened with the About a Boy Kid?
Yeah, and it backfires, and instead of healing him, it makes him go like further into his mutation.
Yeah,
which apparently is blue, and I think this version at least looks very much like a blue version of the Beast from Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, definitely. Who plays the Beast in the movie?
So there's two different actors. Oh, you would love X-Men 3 is a pretty awful movie, but he's played by Kelsey Grammer.
Kelsey Grammer is great as Beast as well. Like he's brilliant. But, not terribly well made movies, but his casting was great.
Phenomenal. And then he's played by Nick Holt in the prequels, and he's good as well. But Kelsey Grammer is genuinely perfect.
Yeah,
like there's this scene
Kelsey
in
Grammer
X-Men 3.
Basically plays him like this Beast and X-Men.
Yeah, 100%. They're in the middle of a battle, and Wolverine's because in the movie he's like a diplomat or something like that, and Wolverine's like, I thought this isn't very diplomatic of you, and he's just like, there comes a time when every man should stand over diplomacy. Oh, you'll get that, like he's got those kinds of quotes and stuff like that.
Mm.
Throughout the series, he quotes poets and philosophers, and so he's phenomenal. He is really, really good. Anyway, so he's in there. We're spoken about the guards. Everything starts shaking. Beast thinks it's Wolverine being impulsive, but it's actually our introduction to Magneto, who, by the way, is clearly incredibly powerful. Like, he is derobing people. He's crushing weapons. He's pulling walls apart. Like, his power is control of magnetism, but it almost seems as though he can control anything.
Yeah.
So he can certainly make a magnetic
force field. Force field, yeah. When they're shooting at him, I was like, how the hell do you do that with magnets?
Is he trying to recruit Beast at this point?
Yep. And he doesn't realize that Beast knows Professor X, and that's our first tip that Professor X and Magneto know each other. And so he leaves, and then so Xavier explains about how Magneto was once his friend, and you get a flashback, and you actually get what might be Gabrielle Haller, who's the woman in the flashback, and in the storyline that's that Magneto and Professor X work together, and Gabrielle Haller's there, and Gabrielle Haller and Professor X have a child, and he becomes the character Legion, who some people listening may have seen the TV series. Anyway,
so is he explaining? Professor X is explaining this to Jubilee, right?
About how he met Magneto. Yep.
He does it quite well. Like, he wraps up the background pretty quick and pretty well in a few little flashbacks throughout this episode.
Yeah,
that's really good.
This is the point where Jubilee weirdly kisses X, the Professor X. Did you see that?
Is it on like the head?
It's like on the cheek, but it's like a weird kiss. Like,
Yeah.
so
Like-
she's gone from these loving, bloody adoptive parents to this creep.
He is a creep.
That's such a weird. Just seemed like a weird thing, and I looked it up. She's 18 and he's 60.
He's 18. She's 18. I thought she was like 13.
Yeah, I thought she was younger.
It said that she's 18 in the body, but 19 or 20 in the mind. I was like, wow, it's not that much different.
That doesn't make sense.
It's real weird. But yeah, I just thought that was extremely bizarre.
Yeah. So anyway, so basically they rescue the lady in the flashback, but then Magneto wants to take down the soldiers, and you see there's this fundamental difference between their views. Xavier stops him with his. Here's a deviation from the comics and the movies. The helmet he wears, he's supposed to wear because it protects him from Professor X's mind powers. But in the TV series, Professor X can bust right through that thing, which makes sense.
Yeah, it does actually.
And so he's, after several years of being in hiding, Magneto's back, and Jubilee's like, "You're the X-Men, you can beat him," and Xavier's like, "Yeah, I don't know." So Cyclops and Wolverine are at Beast's trial, and there's heaps of protesters outside, inside, and
I just noted down that the judge had a great voice, really distinctive. Really, like I could have listened to him a lot longer.
I think it's worth mentioning that Beast turns Magneto down because he wants to stand trial to prove his innocence, and I'm like, that makes sense, but also you're not innocent.
To stay in court. That's what he says.
You broke into a facility and destroyed stuff. Like, you're guilty, Beast. You're guilty in prison.
Wants to stay in court.
Reminds me of my friend who just would, no matter what, if he got a parking fine, would write in.
Nah.
And even if they got declined, he would then go in personally to dispute the parking fine, so he didn't have to pay it.
It's a lot of effort.
So
anyway, tell us what happens in this court scene, because this is great.
So we meet Cameron Hodge, Beast's lawyer, and that's definitely a name drop from the comics. He's Warren Worthington III, the Angel's friend from college, and he turns out to be a terrible bloke. We'll see if that pans out in the series or not. I seriously can't remember. Beast gives a phenomenal speech in court. Like, if you prick us, do we not bleed? It's really...
That's Shylock's speech, right? From Merchant of Venice?
Yeah.
So that's why I was mentioning at the start. So this is like... Is this about anti-Semitism, this episode, or the Holocaust?
I think it's just an oversimplification of minorities.
Well, I suppose Magneto's whole backstory is that
he survived the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? Oh, I didn't know that.
I don't know if it gets touched on in this. I can't remember, but that's the crux of his...
I think they just kind of mention of like his childhood through war, and then it's like, and they're both being professors that don't know each other each other are mutants and stuff. Which I thought was interesting, that we worked together for ages without knowing each other were mutants, and then something happens and they have to reveal their powers to save someone. I can't.
I've just got a visitor. Hello, Candy. Come here, girl. Good girl. Welcome to the podcast.
It's a dog, by the way.
Yeah, it's definitely not my
Candy.
stripper. So, members of the court, some guy gets kicked out of court for shouting out stuff, but he's right. He's like, they attacked someone attacked the thing yesterday, the prison, and good, honest men got hurt. And it reminds me of that sort of stormtrooper chat, like they blow up the Death Star in Star Wars, yeah, that's mint. And then you think back and like, how many of those guys were just there for a paycheck?
Yeah.
But Sabretooth's part of the crowd, isn't he?
Yeah, so Sabretooth comes in to cause a ruckus. I think
He
maybe
just goes berserk.
is he sent by Magneto, or is he on his... I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I put is he like
believe so.
is he part of Magneto's X-Men
The Brotherhood
group?
of Evil Mutants.
Oh, they're called the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants.
Horrendous name.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Give yourself away with the evil part.
There is worse names coming up as well into certain groups.
X-Men is way better. However,
If
I did write.
is the best one in this series that's coming up. The
What
Friends
is?
of Humanity.
What's FOH?
Friends of Humanity.
Oh, yeah. So I did put X-Men, even though there are women involved.
Yeah. Jeez, that's tough.
I was like, what the heck?
That's long-standing.
One of my notes was going back to Sabretooth just causing a massive ruckus. Is he's best described by Cyclops as a lunatic because he is just like he is just a lunatic. He's all over the place.
Yeah, there's that great scene too where Sabretooth is getting overpowered or whatever, and Cyclops like, we've got to help this guy, he's a mutant. Wolverine's like, nah, folds his arms. And anyway, Cyclops takes down the guards. Obviously, he's got some sort of really good control of his optic blasts because 1 minute they're ripping off a Sentinel's head, next minute they're just knocking blokes over. But anyway, they take him back, and Wolverine's about to get rid of. It seems like he's going to kill him, but turns out he's just going to take him out of the mansion because he doesn't want him there. He's a terrible bloke. And even though he doesn't say, like, what he should say is, I know this guy, I've got history with him, he's an awful bloke, this is all the bad things he's done. He's just like, I know this bloke, he's got to go. And then Professor X is like, no, our job is to help people. We need to help this guy. And Wolverine, you can't bring your personal vendettas in here, blah, blah, blah. And then Magneto attacks
Professor X would have just been able to see, like, the whole backstory in his head. Or does he not pry at this point for some reason?
I don't know if he's probing or not, but he seems like the kind of guy. Anyway, he's like, you can't have a personal vendetta to Wolverine, and then like somehow the mansion alarm goes off, and the code means it's a missile base, and Professor's like, it must be Magneto. We've got to stop this guy at all costs. And Wolverine brings up a great point. He's like, how come my rival's in here and I'm trying to boot him out and you won't let me, and your rival's doing stuff and we got to go kick his ass? So this is 3 episodes in, Professor X has made 2 really terrible calls as the leader. And the missile base is basically, this is X-Men issue 1. Cape Citadel or Cape whatever is a missile base, and Magneto goes there and he's going to destroy all the missile bases, because I think his theory is, mutants have our weapons are our powers. You make weapons to destroy, so I'm going to destroy all your places that make weapons. It's like I'm kind of on board with this.
He could talk you into joining its cult. He would get you there. He has some great lines.
Yeah, and then so they shoot off to the base. They have that big tussle with Magneto, and he's chafed that mutants are fighting him, and it takes a bit of teamwork, but they get that. Sorry, this is when Wolverine says, "Mission accomplished, buddy. Okay, let's go home." Cyclops and Storm does that. Sorry, I got that wrong. That's now. So Storm is awesome, saves the day. They beat Magneto, but he just sort of retreats. And you get that cool thing of him sort of like, why have you chosen this path, Professor Charles? And then I've just got this note here saying, Magneto is mint. And that's the end of the episode, and that's the end of the first 3 episodes. And I'm just like, holy shit, this is so good.
Yeah. I like Magneto's reply to them trying to say they need to get along with, modern society and just work with them however they can. He says it's better to die on your feet than live on your knees. Like, I'll join you. I'll join you. I'm there.
That's a famous quote, isn't it?
Probably, but I'm not smart enough to know that. As far as I know, Magneto made it up.
Yeah, it sounds familiar. I must agree, but I'm also not smart enough to know or type it into Google.
Yeah, that'd take too much time. We clearly, our time's very precious to us. How long have we been talking about X-Men the animated series for the 90s? 3 hours? Yeah. Too busy. Really like Magneto's voice actor as well. There's some great voice actors. Sorry, okay. But I mean, that for their time, like the super 90s. But
Fantastic.
I really like it.
Someone called Euripides said it, and so that's why we didn't look it up, because we don't know who that is. So I think overall, I like, even though like there's characters I like, I don't necessarily like. I just like the cast. I'm a big fan of the fact that we haven't seen it from Jean Grey yet, but the female characters are the strongest characters.
Yes, especially later on with Rogue's ridiculously powerful, and then they even do her backstory of how she got her powers.
Yeah,
Which we'll cover later. That's awesome. Love that.
yeah. And
Also, one thing at the end of this Enter Magneto episode, because most of the time Wolverine's just angry and hates everyone except for Morph, and I kind of suspect just because he died, so he didn't have to be nice to him. But he does call Cyclops buddy at the end of that Enter Magneto one, so that's nice.
Yeah, in the comics, they've got this really storied history of not getting on, and the '60s X-Men, when it was just the 5 of them, all get on reasonably well, and it's really pulpy and pretty hard to read. In the '70s, and they get that new team, Cyclops is the only original member who stays on, and he's the leader. And you get all this really good stuff of him really struggling because Wolverine's a dick who won't listen. Thunderbird, before he passes away, doesn't listen. Like Storm's like fresh out of Africa, and like, you know, like and Colossus is a Soviet Russian farmer, and like he really struggles to pull the team together. I quite like that sort of the dynamic of Wolverine and him not getting on, and we later find out there's pretty specific reasons for that, which only make Wolverine seem like more of a jackass, to be honest.
Well, it's more that just Wolverine just seems to hate everyone in this. Like, even like, you know, there's some other stuff later on with like time travel, and he's like doesn't even know these people. He's like, oh, what does that time jockey want? Weird slur to make up.
Calls everyone in that same time episodes. He just calls everyone a rookie.
Yeah, Bub.
But yeah. So, has anyone got any final thoughts?
As someone who doesn't love, like, I've watched some superhero stuff, but I'm not a massive fan, and not big on comics. I'm interested to carry on, obviously for the sake of the podcast. I obviously don't revel as much as you guys do currently, having only watched 3 episodes. But I like to hear that. Obviously, there's some stuff around backstories, and like I don't know whether you need to read the comics to understand a lot of what's going on. But no, I am enjoying it, and yeah, it's going to be a good watch, I think.
I think that's going to be the most interesting thing, is seeing if you get dragged into the storyline throughout this podcast. That's going to be the best part. And you definitely don't need to read the comics, because the guy that made the movies didn't read the comics. He watched this TV show to make those movies.
Quite clearly, quite clearly.
He said that he did. He watched every episode of the animated series to make the first X-Men movie.
Going back to what was mentioned really early in this podcast was, so maybe Jubilation Lee was the creator, or whoever came up with Jubilation Lee, paying homage to Stan Lee.
I think it's just the use of Lee as a generic Chinese last name.
Yeah. I was hoping you didn't say that.
Yeah, it's definitely.
I honestly think that's probably the case. I hope it's not, but they've made homages to Stan Lee in a great many ways, and quite often the writers and artists like to pay homage to the other creators, because Stan Lee gets a lot of credit, but this is a flaw of the comics industry. Writers get all the credit, but I mean, that is half the job, because comics are all about art. You know, like just recently, as the Hawkeye Disney Plus series one of the, I don't know if he's an executive producer or consultant or something like that, is
Matt Fraction.
his name. Yeah, Matt Fraction, who wrote it. The intro to the series and the credits, the artwork is
And they're awesome.
is based on the art from the series that Fraction.
Right on.
But sorry, it's based on the artist, right? Not the author. And so, like, even now, you know, like I type it into Google. I type in, the series is called My Life as a Weapon Artist, and it's still just giving me Matt Fraction, the author, you know. But I believe his name is David. I don't know. He's Spanish. So how do you pronounce J in Spanish? Aya, AJA.
I think that's right.
David Aya or Aja or Aja. I apologize to all of our Spanish-speaking listeners.
I don't think anyone in our family speaks Spanish.
But that's this massive thing, you know, like that. You know, Stan Lee's the god of Marvel Comics, but you know, Jack Kirby drew everything. But anyway, I don't know what's going on with Jubilee's name or last name or just her shtick. Anyway, she's my least favorite character in the series. I find her incredibly annoying.
Sam, do you know about the latest news of this series? Reasons we're quite keen to do this. Or should I leave this? Should I tell him this, Sean, or should we?
You can tell him.
So, one of the reasons we're talking about we should do this, do a summary series, is this show, this style, this 90s X-Men show is coming back. It's going to be on Disney Plus. They're going to make new episodes following on the story.
Yeah.
With new animation?
I'd assume new animation, but I'd hope they'd just do it the same, like do the.
I'd say
make people's fights
they released
very
one
variable.
image, and it's the same outfits and stuff like that. It's called X-Men '97.
And Wolverine still had blue hair.
I hope it changes a lot.
He was wearing his mask.
I hope their height is just all over the show. Sometimes Storm will be 7 foot. And hopefully it's all of that. That'd be great.
That's okay. That's good. It'd be good to get through the 70 episodes that this is, and then have more to watch.
Yeah. So this will never end.
Speaking of never ending,
what do we
for our next episode for our listeners who are watching along? We're going to do 5 Deadly Reunions, Captive Hearts, Cold Vengeance, Slave Island, and the Unstoppable Juggernaut. And most of these episodes, I think at least 3, maybe 4 of them, are the episodes I've seen the most, because they were the only episodes on the one United Video VHS X-Men animated series that I got out every weekend when this show wasn't on Saturday mornings for like 5 years. Got this out and got Mortal Kombat 95 out and watched that great movie.
Outstanding stuff.
So that's where we're at. It's a nice. What have we got there? Nearly 2 hours of viewing. I suppose you can skip the recaps.
I will be.
But don't you dare skip the intro.
No,
I will not be.
Right. Yep. You'll wrap us up, Sammy.
Oh yeah. Signing off for next time.
Is that what's the sign off?
See you later.
Oh, that's all. We don't have a sign off. Pat, quickly come up with a sign off for our X-Men. Oh no, I've got it.
Right. Next time on X-Men.
No, I'll say. Where's my notes? I'll say, mission accomplished, buddy, and then Sellers, you say, okay, let's go home. All right, you ready for our new sign off? Mission accomplished, buddy.
Okay, let's go home.